Imagine boosting your revenue from $100,000 to $900,000 within few weeks. That's the power of optimizing operations over marketing. In today's episode, we dive into the real cost of ignoring your team's needs and how a simple shift in focus can transform your business. Discover why 70% of new businesses is referral based and how improving employee satisfaction leads to better customer experience and increased profits. Stay tuned as we reveal actionable insights to streamline your operations and maximize your growth potential. Hello, Cassandra. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Ash. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. Welcome to the Founders Podcast. Before we start, Cassandra, do you have a favorite quote, something that motivates you, inspires you, you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah, there is a quote from the author Chris Voss, and the book is Never Split the Difference. And the quote goes, "Don't be so sure of what you want that you wouldn't take something better."
Don't be so sure that you wouldn't want your next letter. I have that book in my reading list.
Oh,
I've
it's a
been
great
waiting.
book.
I was hoping that I think it's his second edition, I guess, but I might be wrong. Yeah, that's in my list. Great stuff. So, Cassandra, imagine we are in a room full of founders, early stage builders, and no one knows your name. No one knows who you are. And you walk in, you have the stage, you have the mic, you have the spotlight. What would you tell them about your story that they will listen to it and then they will stick with us for the rest of the hour?
Yeah, so one thing I would want to tell them is that improving the quality of life of your employees results in a better customer experience and more revenue in the long run.
Indeed, indeed. And nobody can argue on that because the best companies built on in this whole world is because they had the best teams, right? And the best teams is, how you reward your employees, how you take care of them, and then make them listen like they're respected in the organization, right? Okay, great stuff. So, Cassandra, talk us through the disconnect between the usual marketing and the operations part. And why do you think there is always a disconnect between these two departments, usually in organizations?
I think part of it is when we look at data, it's really easy to associate revenue increases to marketing efforts. So if you start marketing on Google, you see those leads come in from that, or doing billboard advertisements. A lot of that stuff is really trackable. Whereas making investments into your operations, in your teams, in your processes, it's almost like a secondary source of increased revenue, reduced cost and things like that. But the reality that I see is there is a huge connection between how you treat your employees, the type of processes that you create, and the type of customer experience you create. Because at the end of the day, that is your reputation. And the numbers don't lie when we look at how businesses grow. The stat is somewhere around 70% of new business is referral based. So that is true. That is reputation based. So that means only 30% of your new leads are coming through marketing efforts, while the remaining are there almost exclusively because of the type of services you're providing.
And I think every founder can relate to it because you see what happens is when we get at a early stage, when a founder gets funded, they have limited amount of funds, which is a very expensive capital which we acquire from the outside world, right? And then you have this kind of expectations from the early investors that you will at least 10x their investment, isn't it? And based on that expectation, most of the founders focus on how to gain more eyeballs, more traction, more customers. And that's why they want to invest more in getting the brand out, they're getting the service words out and marketing and everything. And the part which they usually forget about is, okay, the leads are coming in. How are you going to manage them? How are you going to utilize them? What if after the first conversation, it just drops out of your funnel, right? And how do you encourage your employees to sort of recontact them and then potentially convert them into customer, which could be a lifelong value? So let's touch a little bit more around the thought founders usually have that if I have leads coming in, or maybe in other words, if we say, if I have the marketing is in place, I'm sorted. Like marketing is enough for my business, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that It's funny because I had a conversation a couple of months ago with a business owner that I'm currently working with. And I had told him, I was like, hey, we really should work on your process. Like, your processes are holding your business back and it's holding your employees back too. Right. And he responded with, well, sales solves all problems. He's like, as
Mm,
long as I'm selling more and more and more, any problem I have can be resolved with sales. And I'm like, okay, until you're ready to make that leap into working on your operations, I totally get it. Well, 2
mm,
weeks later, he called me up and he was like, "Yeah, 2 of my employees quit." And I'm like, "Sales can't solve that problem. It doesn't matter the number no matter the amount of money you're bringing in, if you can't retain the people that convert, those customers into recurring customers or like you're saying, like lifelong leads essentially,
mm.
you're hurting your business as a collective. And so I see that a lot. I see a lot of business owners, and I get it. I totally understand it. Like you need money to pay for people, pay for the businesses, pay for the expense, and pay yourself. But at the end of the day, if you're getting way more leads than your funnel can handle, you're missing a huge amount of opportunity.
Indeed, indeed. And in 2026, if you do not have this operational artifacts streamline, especially for your front end of the business where the customer is coming, where the leads are coming, it gets a little bit tighter. And I would like to share a story here, which I have sort of experienced firsthand. So we recently started a new engagement with some online influencers, right? Instagram, TikTok, right? We picked up from all of them from the portal. And what we asked them is to create some UGC content for us so that we can publish them and potentially run ads on these content. While they were doing it, we realized that in order to create 30 to 60-second long videos, they had to add B-rolls, background music, they had to add captions and all these sort of things. And every single influencers we had almost 28, every single of them were told us like, okay, we can create these UGC content for you between 45 seconds to 1 minute, but it will take us a week. Some of them had pipelines, some of them were just new to the editing, and some of them is just like they have different editors. They just do the shooting part and then the editor parts. And then I'm engineer, and we were sitting in a room and we were talking about we are spending tons of money giving these influencers, but these people actually have a real problem here, which is going through the whole process. And how they're solving it by hiring different people, freelancers or people who can edit the videos. So what we did is we kind of automated this whole workflow with an AI agent where you upload a talking head video on your Google Drive. It picks it up from there. First thing it does, it captions it, so we have all the words. Then based on the captions, it picks up, I don't know if you've heard about Nano Banana from Google, which creates the images from AI. So
Yeah,
it creates,
that's really cool. Oh, that's
yeah, so
really
it
cool.
it creates the images, and then because of that timestamps, it knows which time it needs that image to put as B-roll on it. And then what it does, it adds a background music, which is like sort of sounds better when you put a UGC video. And then at the end adds, these borders, which is like a progress bar, which
Yeah.
engages you. Oh, it is about to finish. And we were able to show them, these influencers, this automation. You would be surprised to know, out of 28, we were able to sell this automation to 12 of them. We were
Oh,
their customers and they bought it from us. You see what I mean, right? Yeah. Streamlining operation or streamlining your day-to-day activity could not just help you, but also increase your business in an unprecedented way, because you don't know what's going to happen once you have all these things automated, right? So would you be able to talk through, that when we had our intro call, you were talking more about like when you had this client of yours, or maybe I think you were working for one of the organization where you created a funnel and then you had a spreadsheet and then you automated some emailing in the backend. Would you be able to talk us through and share that example with our listeners?
I'm not exactly sure which one you're referencing, but there is the
If,
one with the call center that I like set up and they had like a huge revenue increase.
Mhm.
So this particular business, they had come to me and they were currently spending about $40,000 in marketing, specifically in magazine marketing. They were a home services construction style business, and I'm in the Midwest of the United States, and they were saying, we're currently spending 40,000. We want to invest like another 40,000 because we're just not getting enough leads.
Mm,
And I had responded with, let's look at the data first before we go and make such a huge investment and see if that makes sense, right? If that's the route we should go. And once
mm,
we dug into the data, what we found out is they weren't picking up 50% of their calls.
mm,
So I came back to the owners and I was like, hey, like we can double your spend, but if you're not going to pick up the phone, it's not going to feel like it's making a difference. I said, we
mm,
need to solve this phone issue first. So what I did is I vetted a couple of different call answering services and worked with them specifically to see, who would be the best fit, not only for budget, but for the amount of work that needed to be done. And then once we picked that, I helped set up the script. I trained the entire team on how the script was going to affect their workflow. And they went from picking up only 50% of their calls to 100% because the call center could pick up everything.
mm.
And then their revenue increased by $900,000.
Wow.
So all in all, the investment between the call center for that year and the services that I provided was about 10,000. So to invest 10,000 and make a $900,000 jump in revenue is huge. And again, their initial investment that they were going to make was 40. So not only did I save them $30,000 by kind of looking at operations over marketing, but we also had what I would think would be a much bigger revenue spike because of that. I think if they would have put that money into marketing, they wouldn't have seen that type of revenue spike.
And that's such a great example of looking inside when you're running a business and understanding like where the leaks are, and then potentially absorbing and understanding these leaks, and then stop them and create a new business stream, right? Cassandra, if you are helping out, so 28% of our listeners are mostly founders who are building something in the tech space, right? And I'm sure you're very well known with that kind of space and vertical. If you're helping a tech founder who is building a tech product, mostly software as a service or an app or something on similar lines, what would be your advice when it comes to getting more eyeballs on the product or services? What are the different strategies you think in current 2026 is working, and why founders don't think about these strategies?
I think that so I actually do work with a software as a service company, and one of the biggest gaps they have is public educational content.
Mm,
So their content is all behind only users have access to their educational content, their knowledge base, everything. And one of the things I'm working with them on is getting them to be more comfortable sharing publicly the capabilities, right? The capabilities and the limitation of their software. Because the reality is a lot of software as a service sales pipelines are you have to talk to a salesperson before you even know what the price is or even know the capabilities of the software in general. And I think people underestimate the power. One, AI is taking over what people are searching, right? Search engines are still the foundation of everything, but people are looking for answers to questions and providing educational content that is not only sharing capabilities of your software, but answering those questions that people are looking for is going to be way more powerful in getting eyeballs on your software versus, just dumping a ton of money into marketing and trying to force your way in front of those people. I think it needs to be a good balance of both. So, a good, strong, organic content pipeline that is very educational paired with getting spending marketing on very specific niche locations, right? Subreddits are really good ways to get involved with that niche market that you may be trying to go after, that vertical you're going after.
mm.
So in general, the best advice I can give you is create a ton of educational content that is specifically answering questions.
Indeed, indeed. And thanks for sharing that. And I loved your example when you explain how you have helped out the organization with understanding the leakage in their call center, and how they improved it. Is there any other example you can share where strong marketing actually exposed the weaknesses in operation? And the reason I'm asking it is because I could not emphasize more about improving operation is so important, but in real world, founders or business people don't actually understand it that much. And in order to explain it to them how much it affects their business, these kind of strong examples are quite impressive.
Yeah, there is. So my previous organization that I worked for was in manufacturing, and the owner had left the largest manufacturer of that industry in our area. That the largest manufacturer in the area, they had over 40 years of existence. It was multi-generational with multiple families. They are working with some of the biggest brands out there, in the retail space. They were huge, and he had started his own business. We were much smaller. We were comparing ourselves, which was about $1 million manufacturing plant, to a $40 million manufacturing plant. But we end up doing a lot of work for that much larger plant, right? So they had amazing marketing. They owned the market, right? Anybody big that was doing work with them knew to do work with them and nobody else, right?
Mm,
But they were sourcing some of the work to a company that was a 40th of their size. And the owner of that very large $40 million company was like, why can this group of, 10, 15 people do something that our 150 people plant can't do? And I
mm,
think that was eye-opening for me because it helped me realize that operations can really take you places that marketing can't, right?
mm,
And especially when we talk about smaller businesses, when you're a smaller business trying to compete in a market full of very large competitors that do have that big purse that they can spend a ton of money on marketing, the only way to truly differentiate yourself is through your operations, right? Serving a Facebook ad is not what sets you apart from your competition. It's how you actually produce is what sets you apart from your competition. So one thing I've been trying to encourage people to consider is that if everybody's spending a ton of money on marketing, on Google advertising, social media advertising, but no money on their operations, and the whole point of marketing is to stand out from your competition, to stand out is to take some of that, not necessarily take some of that money from marketing, but invest money in operations because none of
mm.
your competition is doing that.
Indeed. This is so crucial because, as you mentioned the point before, that creating helpful content brings you quite a lot of eyeballs, but also that doesn't the business strategy should not stop there, because once you have a lot of eyeball, you need to satisfy their top of the funnel need, and then potentially filter them to get them as a customer into your funnel. And that's why I wanted to understand more around when you said that what makes this helpful content you mentioned before actually helpful from a user's perspective. Like, how do tutorials become such a dominant form of content in recent years, specifically with AI, as people are looking for answers?
I think like if you're trying to figure out what content to put out, right?
Mm,
If you currently already have users, they're already asking the questions that should be your initial, right,
mm,
education. So I always recommend listen to what your current users are asking or your current customers are asking and put that content out first. Because if one person has that question and they're willing to take the time and energy to actually ask that question, there has to be a huge plethora of people that are also asking that same question,
same
but
question.
maybe not reaching out to you directly, right? They're searching it to try to find the answers. And the goal of the educational content is also to establish yourself as an authority on the topic,
Mm,
right? And becoming an authority can help build trust. So one thing I will recommend, and it's kind of a piece of caution, right, is if you are going to put educational content out there, the goal should be to educate. It shouldn't be to sell, right? People
mm,
see that. They can see through that. It's people don't want to be sold to. That is it's a very uncomfortable experience. So educational content needs to truly be for the benefit of the people you're trying to educate and not necessarily for like a growth revenue source. Now, a side effect of that will be growth revenue, right? Your revenue growing. So, I think people want to learn, people want to be experts in what they do. I think this is why this is growing content. This is
mm,
what a lot of people are offering. When people are doing their jobs, they want to be really good at what they do. Providing a a resource that can help them get there is that buys you loyalty.
Definitely. And you must be wondering why Ash is smiling when I'm talking. And the reason I'm smiling is because I'm the first hand experience holder in this particular scenario. And I would love to like share this with you also. So let me quickly share my screen if I can. So, when I mentioned about like we started putting this automation as a tool for users. So we created this platform, right? It's simple, straightforward. And then what we did is we created all these tools like you can add intro, add outro, background audio,
Mm.
everything with the help of APIs, right? But we didn't have these videos in place. What we did is exactly what you have just explained. What we did is every single time, whenever you people used to come on this portal, register and then sort of like create an API to utilize. What we did is we sent them an email saying, "Hey, this is Ash. What use cases you're trying to automate? What is
Mm.
exactly you're trying to do with our APIs? And if you would let us know, we will create a video for you." Almost almost 30% people replied, and every single video you see on our documentation here is because
Yeah.
somebody replied to us and we created a tutorial for them, and then based on this tutorial, more people signed up.
I
So you
see.
see,
I love it when you listen, right? Like, I think
yeah,
a lot of owners and leadership get caught up in thinking that they know what people want,
yeah,
but actually listening to what people are asking, even if you're like, why, right? Like, even if it feels crazy and outlandish to you, logically it makes sense to them, and they're not alone, right?
yeah.
So yeah, this is really cool that you did this.
Yeah. And then the best part is that every single person who reached out to us, they were all asking us same question. Oh, which automation platform you are? And the answer was none. And then what we realized is creating APIs is not enough for them. We created integration with Anit and Make, Zapier,
Yep.
everything. And then most of our customers are now coming from this platform because that's where the automation
Mhm.
consultant hang around, right? So it's like pouring in all these free leads without doing any kind of marketing and keeping YouTube your first instance of entering like the top of the funnel, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to, like, just to know more about, like, your guys' back end numbers too of, like,
Mm.
how many are you getting directly that can be directly connected to marketing versus
Mm.
these, like, organic operational improvements that are leading to more eyeballs on your product?
Indeed, indeed. I'm definitely going to share it with you later on once we have more understanding of the data. But yeah, that's what I wanted to share. Like how important and powerful it is to understand your customer, right? Great. So let's talk a little bit more about closing the loop between the marketing promises and operational delivery.
Mm.
So you talk about training as a growth lever, right? Would you be able to explain a little bit more to our listeners about what that exactly means, and if there is a case or a customer who you had helped previously whose story could be helpful for us to understand this concept.
Yeah, so the best use case I have was my previous employer.
Hmm.
We were manufacturing, and it was initially me, right? I was the first employee. We ended up growing to a team of 15, which I ended up overseeing all of them as the operational person. But I kept running into the same problem myself, which was I would do something and then say 3 months later I would need to redo that task. And I had no idea. I knew I had accomplished it before, but it felt like constantly reinventing the wheel every time that I was trying to complete that task. And I worked with the owner there and we developed a training program that was very big on documenting processes when
Hmm.
things go wrong, documenting how we fix those problems so that if they go wrong in the future, we can very quickly troubleshoot the issues. And we, in manufacturing, the turnover rate is about 6 months. That's pretty average for the industry. We were able to reduce our turnover to 2 to 3 years on average for employees. And there is so much cost that gets sunken into you know, onboarding people, finding people for the position, getting them up and running. And to have that sunken cost every 6 months, affects morale, it affects your bottom line, it affects everything about the business. It affects your customer experience too, because now, I don't have somebody who has been around for 3 years that knows what they're doing producing, right? I have someone who's only been here for 6 months, and the likelihood of mistakes are going to skyrocket, right? With people with less experience.
Yeah.
So for us, we had such a well oiled machine and we were running so well. Now, it's not to say that we didn't always have to be looking and working on our operations, but we could focus more on marketing at that point. We didn't have to worry about if we got a huge account that was, a $1 million account. How are we going to produce? We knew we were able to produce. We knew we had the right people to get the jobs done, and we knew we would keep that client happy and ideally get more referrals from them with the quality of work that we outputted.
Mm.
So,
And
yeah.
yeah, gone.
So I was gonna say, like, for me, the biggest thing that I've noticed in most companies, and the numbers don't lie either, is companies spend more on hiring people than training them. And I think
Mm.
this is like 64% of businesses either don't have any training for employees or have training, but they don't implement it very well. So again, that goes back to your competition's not doing this. So by doing that alone, it's going to make you stand out.
Got it. Got it. And which metrics which operational metrics should be tracked alongside the marketing performance when it comes to training your employees? Because I would love to understand it. I mean, 64% is quite a lot of companies who are not
Yeah.
training their employees, right? I mean, so much potential is wasted there, isn't it? Would you be able to share a little bit more around those
Yeah.
metrics?
So, one other metric that is a really big stat that people get impressed by is 20% of an employee's time is trying to figure out how to do their job.
Mm.
So, if you look at a full, say, 40-hour work week, that is almost an entire day of the week is literally spent just trying to find answers to how to do their job correctly. And that can also lead to interruptions with
Mm.
other employees. So, when we look at metrics, one really good one is your turnover, right? Looking at your turnover. If you do have a high turnover, that's a metric I would try to work on. And
Mm.
one way to work on that without necessarily, offering more money necessarily to employees or better benefits is creating a less stressful work environment. And a less stressful work environment is produced with easy processes for people to follow, a really well put together training program. So, turnover is a really good KPI to look at. If you have other KPIs, for example, in manufacturing, it was how many orders can a CSR process, right? And the previous plant I worked for, a CSR was processing about 20 to 25 orders on average a month. And after doing a bunch of automations and improvements on the processes, we were able to up that to 40 jobs a month. And we
Mm.
had one CSR that was producing almost 80 jobs a month. So we went from, 20 and we quadrupled it in some cases. So
Mm.
that's another really good KPI that you can look at of what is the production on an individual's level, right? And
Mm.
what are they missing to be able to increase production? And a lot of times you can have a conversation with the employee and figure out what it is that they're missing. They will tell you what's stressing them out, what's making their job difficult.
Yeah.
And if you have like a department, having individual conversations with everybody within the department, you will find patterns and common denominators that you can work on first.
Mm. Cassandra, which metrics give a misleading picture when viewed in isolation within marketing? Because I think there must be some kind of metrics which founders or business owners are looking at, and they are giving them idea that they're growing or they're making progress or making profit. There has to be some of them misleading, right?
Yeah. So one of them that everybody uses is return on investment, ROI.
Mm.
And the reason why I say it's misleading is a lot of people do a very simple ROI calculation. So they literally say, how much did I invest and how much did I get out of it? Right. So say you invested $100,000 and you got 1 million. Great. That's like an amazing looking ROI. But the question is, how much does it also cost to produce? Right. So yes, you invested 100,000 and you got 1 million, but if it cost you $900,000 to produce that million, that ROI is a wash, right?
Mm.
So one thing I try to work with a lot of business owners on is coming up with what is your like average profitability on a job or a project. And that can be hard, right, to figure that out. But I like to add that into the ROI calculation, is taking out that cost of production as well to get a true return on investment. What's our profitability on the marketing investment that we made? So that's a big one that I have a lot of people check out. And it's, if you look up an ROI calculation, it is literally just what you invested and what you made. And I don't think that tells the full story.
No, I totally understand. And thank you for sharing this formula because that makes more sense in terms of like, why would you consider a 10x return of investment if you can see operationally it's literally like even, right?
Yeah.
So before we move into our quick fire round, Cassandra, I wanted to ask you something. If a founder is listening to our show right now and realize their growth problem is operational rather than marketing led, right? Where should they start?
So the way that I start is having candid conversations with both leadership and employees in different rooms.
Mm,
Because leadership has a very different perspective on what is wrong sometimes than what employees do. And having those interviews in a situation where the employee can feel like they can speak honestly, right? And a lot of times you will hear complaints about certain processes or certain clients, even like clients can be costly and it's costing you more to have them than it is to, move on from them and find new clients. Those are the things I start with first. And then from there, trying to figure out what's the lowest hanging fruit. So what's
mm,
the thing that, takes the least amount of investment to make a change? And sometimes it's something as simple as like investing in a software, right? There's a
mm,
software you need that is going to make a big change for you and move that needle way farther and make everybody happier. But the other thing I really recommend is finding somebody that can be like a process champion within your business.
mm,
So somebody that is an early adopter, they're excited to try, say, new technology or learn new things. They love learning, and they have a little bit of enthusiasm. And this person, typically, I recommend it not being a leadership. It needs to be somebody who
mm,
is in the trenches with the rest of the team. And as they start to roll out those changes for you, change management becomes way easier. So it's not a top down leadership is telling me I have to use this new program. It's,
mm,
oh, my coworker over here is using this new program, and all they do is talk about how amazing it is. I need to get in on using this new program too. So those are kind of like the few things that I really recommend leadership to start with, because
mm.
the goal isn't for the leadership to make the changes necessarily, is you need your employees to adopt those changes. So having
Indeed.
someone to be the executioner is like the way to go.
Indeed, indeed. Couldn't agree more with you on this one. And this is fantastic because that's where the crux of our conversation is that most of our listeners would be the people who want to get into the founder space or founder suite and some people who are already there, at least they have a clear direction now. So thank you so much for that, Cassandra. So let's move on to our quick fire round now. I've got
Yeah.
6 quick fire questions for you. If you do not want to answer any of them, just give me a skip and then we'll move to the next one.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. What are the top 3 strategies to generate more leads in 2026?
It would go back to educational content because AI is going to be pushing a lot of questions and answers. I would also say being in spaces where your competition is not. A lot of people don't use direct mail, and direct mail can be a very good way to target in certain industries. Not every industry, but in certain industries. And the mailboxes are empty. Our email boxes are not, but your actual mailbox is.
Mm, mm,
And then I think creating loyalty programs and ways to get some of your most committed like customers to kind of talk about you. So getting those testimonials and programs of asking them if they have people that they can refer to you, leaning on your best buyers is going to be huge.
mm. Makes sense. What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
I'm going to say Never Split the Difference from Chris Voss. That was
Yeah.
a very big game changer for me.
Mm, yeah. I think the first half I read through and I learned about mirroring and labeling.
Yep.
And after that I just stopped reading it. But I have to finish it. So
Yeah.
maybe next time when we jump on a call, I would finish it and then talk about all the techniques it teaches.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Great. What's one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
Being open minded. I think
Mm,
that if you are not open to other people's opinions and feedback and stuff like that, you're gonna miss out on really big opportunities.
definitely. What's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
That's a hard one. You know what? I will say inbox zero.
Hmm.
I actually like part of one of my services that I offer is teaching other people how to roll out inbox zero into their organization. That is easily my favorite productivity habit.
Yeah, I follow that. I have like 10 inboxes for 10 different
It's rough.
things. And that's rough, but I do make sure that every single email, if I receive and that's not relevant, goes to junk, blocked, everything,
Yep.
and make sure that everything is read if they're important because I need to answer my customers, right? What's a new or a crazy business idea you would love to pursue if you had time?
That's a hard one. A crazy business idea that I would love to jump on. You know, at least this is more like related to the United States, but if I had like unlimited funds to get into stuff, is creating some large, massive like healthcare group that allows people to not have to pay, large sums, if something goes wrong with their health.
Kind of like a health insurance sort of things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. But, like, one that is, like, more geared towards focusing on paying physicians so well that they would rather, again, work for, within our network or versus, other networks and having a lot less of the administrative costs, which is what is ballooning it here locally.
indeed. What's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
I am a retro video game collector. So,
Oh,
yeah, we are very big on finding old video games, and when I say retro, I'm talking like Nintendo, Super Nintendo,
yeah.
a lot of the stuff that I grew up on, but we're big on that. And specifically, I collect Legend of Zelda video games.
Nice. I've heard about it. I haven't played. I'm not a big gamer, but I do have Xbox. Sometimes we
Yeah.
play.
Yeah, when you have time. Well, I get it. I'm the same way now. I collect, I don't play as much.
Cassandra, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story, unpacking all the wise suggestions you have given to our listeners. If people want to get in touch with you, they have any questions related to any operational improvement, what's the best way to do it?
Yeah, the best way is just to connect with us on our website, which is unluckyumbrella.com.
Great. Sandra, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey and the impactful work you're doing. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Founders Podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.